very warm welcome. I'm Himanshi Tiwari, and today for this very special episode, we are privileged to speak with three key leaders from Brainlab, a pioneer in medical technology. Throughout this interview, we will be exploring the key technologies shaping the future of healthcare. We'll be talking about the journey of the company and also dive deep into the technology both from regional and global perspective. To start with this conversation, say hello to Stefan Wilsmer, founder and CEO at Brainlab. Stefan, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Very nice meeting you.
Thank you so much for coming to India and talking to us about your company and the future of medical technology.
India is always an exciting place to visit from a personal culture point of view, and certainly it's always a place where technology is embraced, sometimes even more than it is in Europe. So being here is always great.
Thank you so much for those kind words. And to begin the conversation, let's start by understanding what inspired you to sort of delve into this field of medical technology. You've been in this industry for decades, for so long, you've seen all the transformations. But when you started, what inspired you to start your journey in this field, and how has been the road so far for you?
Well, starting a business with the idea of brain surgery isn't what most people think as a destiny in life. So for me, it all started with my first computer, which was a Commodore 64 that I got at the age of 15. And if you don't start at 7 or 8, you're never going to be very good in software. So I was probably the worst software engineer to work at Brainlab, but I knew whom to hire. However, with this first computer, I started really focusing on 3D graphics, and I wrote a book on 3D graphics when I was 16. And the book sold 50,000 copies in just the first year. And because of that book, I was invited by the University of Vienna to join them for some special project in neurosurgery. And this way, I saw the first images from computer tomography and magnetic resonance tomography, 3D images of the human body. And I couldn't believe that this precision from those images wasn't used for surgery, that people would put up those images in a light box in the corner of the room and start surgery with what they had memorized. So for me, it was clear that software was the missing link. And I had studied computer science at the Technical University of Munich, but I dropped out of college after 20 days. And then I had no other chance to succeed with what I started. And 30 years ago, you were not a good neurosurgeon if you needed software. Today, you're not a good neurosurgeon if you do procedures without the right use of software. And actually, some of the first customers and the first inspiration, was here in Asia. And so even before the technology was appreciated in Germany. So for that reason, we have always been looking at our business from a global perspective.
All right. Thank you for sharing those insights with me about your journey, and of course, how you sort of, the whole thing that you explained about, brain surgery and everything, that was so intriguing. But was there any particular solidifying moment, any defining moment that sort of solidified your commitment to this industry, to this field?
Well, I thought that I always in my life wanted to have impact with what I did. And so in healthcare, that's always the area where I think the impact on people is really the most. Today, our technology is in use in almost 7,000 hospitals in 120 different countries. There's over 20 million patients that have benefited from our technology. So that's a very addictive area to stick to. So today, our technology can be best described as maybe a GPS system for the human body. We make surgery more precise, less invasive, and less expensive than traditional surgeries. And that's something that has a great need everywhere in the world. And so going and looking at where are the specific needs in individual countries is always quite interesting. And that's why coming here is also for me quite important.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's get inside. We have a lot more to talk to you, many questions. We are truly excited about this. All right. Stefan, you've been talking so much about medtech, and there are a lot of other companies in this space as well. Brainlab is your brainchild. So I want to understand from you, what sets your company apart?
I think in medical devices, there's a lot of companies that make the knives, spoons, and forks of surgery, endoscopes, imaging equipment. But we are trying to digitize surgery by a set of tools that almost function like a GPS system. And a lot of companies think of it in terms of a hardware solution to a particular problem. We think about every problem from the perspective of what a software solution could contribute. So that is driving surgeries to be more efficient and safer, and that's maybe the big difference. So we have been really born in the digital age and really transform healthcare from a software perspective, while others still live in this concept of hardware.
All right, thank you for that insight. But on that note, there are technologies like AI and telemedicine, emerging technologies like these are integral, right? But how are these technologies sort of reshaping the future of healthcare, if you can help us and our viewers understand?
I think, in fact, AI is always used as an example, or healthcare is used as an example to show how AI can be relevant. And however, there isn't like really a lot of products left and right that use AI at scale. And we are actually at the forefront of using it every day in our surgeries by intelligently detecting landmarks, points to guide surgeons. And we are also very much focused on data. And if you look at healthcare, it was always for decades about, can you provide a better treatment? Can you do that at a lower cost? But the challenge in the future is going to be increasingly, can you provide an adequate level of care at all? In Germany, 20% of the hospital beds can't be filled because there's a lack of staff. Here in India, the population, which is also the potential of the country, is growing so fast that even regardless of how many people you train, you're really dependent on finding new tools to scale the system with a growing population. And I think that while AI and technology was always nice to have, it almost becomes a crucial necessity. And what we need for that is really high quality data. So of course, everybody's looking at what is a quick win? How can we have this one singular solution of creating an AI-driven initiative? But Brainlab has always been investing into a complete data ecosystem that basically collects data in a systematic way across a complete discipline like neurosurgery or spinal surgery to really provide the better tool for making the right decisions. So India has some of the best surgeons in the world. I've been coming here to study and train and look at what we can even learn for other markets. In fact, we brought surgeons from the entire Asia-Pacific region for training here to India. But now with the tools of AI, we can capture those skills and we can scale it. So I think AI is giving us scalability so that more patients in India can benefit from a better treatment. And that's where Brainlab wants to be at the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely. AI is making a lot of things easy for us. There have been a lot of headlines talking about AI is the future, but actually it is the present, right? And we are actually seeing AI doing a lot of things for us. But on that note, you were saying, you have been coming to India for so long, right? What sets India apart? I also want to ask this question from you. You have been coming to India for past 30 years. You have seen so many changes in India and perhaps in the medtech space as well. So first, why India? And secondly, how have you seen this space evolving in the past few years or in the few decades?
So I think what I'm interested in general is making an impact with what I do. And in India, the resources are disproportionate to the number of people. And so therefore, a lot of times it's also a very tough market because with less resources, hospitals need to provide care for a lot more patients. Yeah. So in negotiating, the sale of any of our technology is one of the toughest markets in the world. But it has also taught us on how to rethink our technology in a way that can scale more easily. So that means less hardware, more software, more virtualizing technology. And so being confronted with the realities and also cost pressures for catering more patients has actually forced us as a company to rethink our portfolio. So a decade ago, for something called Brain Suite, which was the most modern operating room, something that in Singapore would still cost 20 million, we needed to almost like reinvent here for India to be done in less than $1 million. And so that's a continuous journey, and we have a few things in the pipeline that will be, I think, quite attractive for India.
On that note, you've been talking about Brainlab as well. So what is stored in future for Brainlab? When we'll talk about the next 5 or 10 years, what is your vision for Brainlab?
So today we have touched the lives of over 20 million patients, and this has been mostly in neurosurgery, spinal surgery, and orthopedic surgery, and different types of cancer. We're going to expand that even further. I think that virtually every cancer patient will benefit from our technology. We have a world where patients are living longer, there's more people with degenerative diseases, but with also neurodegenerative diseases like dementia, Alzheimer, and so on. And so I think the need of our technology will ultimately touch the lives of a lot more patients. And we will be looking at building an ecosystem where we capture data in a much, much better and more detailed way. And that detailed data will drive personalized medicine that is tailored to every single patient. Patients will in the future be their own healthcare manager. They will have a mobile device that controls all the information, but it can't be a proprietary solution from company A, B, or C. It has to be something that's open, and the number of doctors is not going to grow exponentially, but the amount of data will. And only if patients are their own healthcare manager, there's a future that is bright. And so for that reason, we need to empower patients. We need to give the control over that data back to the patients. And this is something where I believe that you will find a few markets that are going to be more receptive than India.
All right. Thank you so much, Stefan, for sharing those wonderful insights and all those intriguing experiences that you shared with us. But on that note, I would also like to talk about Brainlab's future technological advancements.
For that, first of all, you should never buy software from a company where the CEO can't give a somewhat decent demo. But I think in this case, it's better if I introduce you to basically the president for our business in this part of the world.
All right, sure, let's go.
Oh, here it is. So this is Vinicius Desromaciel, and
Hi, nice to see you.
he runs our business in this part of the world.
All right, Vinicius, thank you so much for joining us today. We want to talk with you about the future advancements, innovations, all the technological advancements. And for that, let's get inside the room. All right, thank you so much for joining us today. From you, we want to understand, when we talk about Brainlab's flagship products, so what is that one thing, or what are those key features that set these products apart from the others in the market?
I mean, I think this part has been covered by Stefan already, but Brainlab was started 35 years ago. And since then, before it became a buzzword, we've been digitizing healthcare. So, I mean, nowadays, everybody's doing some digitalization and everything in all fields, but Brainlab has been about digital since the first product. And nowadays it didn't change. So we are really looking into precision surgery. We're looking into precision radiotherapy and really focusing on how we can best support our users to give their patients the best care possible. So that's our main philosophy, and our, let's say, flagship products nowadays, and I mean also present in India. If we look into the surgical business, we could say all the integrated operating rooms with our robotic suite, for example. Looking into navigation systems, I mean, the same thing as a GPS for your car, we do have it for the human body. I mean, for every human body, you can really have a unique map, and you can give the surgeons the guidance to do the best surgical approach possible, so that patients would get earlier out of the hospital with a better recovery, and I mean, hopefully with their indications treated. So this is the one part. I mean, we add lots of products around this digital navigation technology. We look into intraoperative imaging, so our robotic mobile CT scanner called BluePax, or we have the robotic surgery. You should understand that as an assistant surgeon in the room being controlled by navigation. That's our robotics all about. You can use that for surgeries in the spine, in the brain, and different areas of the body. So this is for sure one of the big areas we are present on. But on the other hand, we do have the most advanced technologies for radiosurgery, really giving the highest precision possible in those treatments where you have sub-millimeter accuracy in positioning the patient for their radiotherapy treatment, and also the best planning possible. What is the impact of this technology? I would say the patients can get treated more efficiently. Instead of having a 30-course radiation protocol, we can reduce it to 1 session or maybe 3, depending on the treatment protocol. And this makes, the whole of the patient experience and also the outcomes much better, much faster, so as patients with this kind of diseases would expect.
So thank you for sharing those insights. When we talk about digitalization, digital operating rooms have been a game changer when it comes to modern healthcare, right? So what advancements are you seeing in this space, and especially when it comes to changing surgical outcomes?
Okay, digital ORs or digital operating theaters, it's one of my favorite topics, by the way. So I see that the future and what we do currently is transform pieces of information into real useful healthcare data. So it's not about, turning on and off lights in the OR or recording something, but really turning this whole environment into a digital workspace. So bringing patient information from the hospital information systems, it's one key thing. Nowadays you would imagine, surgeons using patient images on a negatoscope on the wall. So, you have a light box and you're just looking at that, but you have 3D information you could really navigate through. That's one thing that the digital OR solutions would bring into the game. But the game changers are, for example, transforming workflows, giving the whole OR staff more tools to be more efficient, to get a better surgical outcome, and also releasing some of the burdens medical professionals have nowadays, because in some countries they spend almost 40% of their time documenting things. Yeah. So, you wouldn't expect, a surgeon using the prime of his time to do documentation, but that's what happens nowadays, and we are lacking personnel in that field. People are queuing for surgeries, for better treatments and everything else. So our solutions and our vision is to use artificial intelligence and a better digitization of workflows to really reduce that burden and give more freedom to medical professionals to do what they do best, which is treat patients.
All right, one thing that intrigues me the most is that Brainlab operates globally, right, with diverse healthcare systems. But how do you sort of integrate your technology with those diverse systems, and how do you kind of do that? Because, these systems are so different at different places.
It's a good question. And it goes back to our history. It's in our DNA. Brainlab started like 35 years ago as a very small digital company. A garage company trying to sell medical devices to the whole world. And our license to exist was integrating with several partners. And nowadays, all we do is vendor agnostic. So whatever you have in your OR or in your treatment devices for radiation oncology, we have an open platform where doctors would not have to change their workflows or preferred implants and so on, because Brainlab has an open software for all those integrations. If you think of all the technologies present in an operating room, so you go from, microscopes, ultrasounds, intraoperative imaging devices, X-rays, even light system and so on. So all those systems could be integrated or can be integrated with an open interface, and that's what we offer. And that's where we really excel, because we do not change the doctor's way of working, we enhance it and we give them better tools or a way to operate on all those different devices with one single interface that is easy to use and very intuitive and makes his OR work as easy as playing on their iPads, for example. So this is something that really helps in that field.
You talked about oncology, you talked about digital operating rooms, you talked about what excites you the most in this space. Well, thank you so much for sharing these views. And now I really want to dig deeper and I want to talk about more localized views. So are you the right person to talk about it?
Well, I've been traveling to India for the past 3 years, but I guess we have better experts in the field that could help you. And I would just invite my colleague Azim Malhotra to do the remaining part of this interview.
All right, Shah, let's meet him.
Yes, let's do it.
Thank you.
Azim ji, आप कैसे हैं?
I'm very good, thank you. आप कैसे हैं?
बढ़िया.
ठीक है. इंडिया अच्छा लग रहा है?
ठीक है.
Okay, very
So, chalo, your interview right now.
good. Thank you.
All right. Hi, Asim.
Hi.
It's a pleasure to see you.
Likewise.
And we have spoken with Stefan and Vinicius about all those technological advancements, the journey of Brainlab. But now we want to get some localized perspective from you as well, which is why we are here. All right, so we are joined by Azim Malhotra, who is MD India and Regional Manager South Asia. Azim, it's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Pleasure's
You
mine.
know, with Stefan and Vinicius, we talked a lot about advancements, technological advancements. How do we envision medtech in the future? With you, I want to take more localized approach. If we talk about the state of medtech in India, how do you see that? Where are we currently?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, I think. And part of your answer is in the question itself. So if you look back at maybe even 3 or 4 years ago, no one was really talking about medtech, right? So this term seems to have just organically developed out of nowhere, right? And now everyone's talking about medtech. But I think for us, for example, at Brainlab, we've been talking about medtech since the 90s, right? And you
For
would have
past
heard
35
that.
years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you look at now what we are envisioning, we are talking about health tech, right? So it's a much larger ecosystem.
Yeah.
But I mean, to answer your question, I think this is probably the most exciting time in this space. I think the need for quality patient care today is higher than it's ever been, and it's only going to increase. I think patients are so much more aware today, of the options in front of them. I mean, I think there's so much more involvement that patients and their families have when they're looking for good quality care, right? So they're doing their own research, they're really getting involved in the process versus, a few years ago where maybe they were speaking to their service provider or their healthcare provider and then kind of just accepting whatever was told to them, right? So I think that level of involvement from the patient side is probably also part of what is driving this. And of course, there's a lot of technology and innovation in the space. So I would say this is probably the best time ever for medtech in this part of the
Medtech
world.
is huge in India currently, as you're saying, but when we talk about the innovations and growth opportunities, so what are those innovations and growth opportunities for yourself and also for this space in India currently?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think the two are quite intertwined, right? So you can't really grow without innovating.
Yeah.
And as you keep growing, you're forced to innovate more, right? So the two are quite intertwined. If I think about the way that the market possibly is going to grow, it's going to really be about driven by patients demanding a higher standard of care, right? It's about service providers such as ourselves really looking at the individual patient journey, trying to understand which are those areas in a market like India, for example, where we haven't been able to serve patients to the extent that we want to, right? So I think areas such as cancer care, for example, right, where there is such a large unaddressed need still, and then you have probably some of the most qualified healthcare professionals in the world who are in India doing some of the most complex cases. Most of our patients come to a surgeon, for example, at a very late stage compared to many other markets in the world. So the kind of complexity that a surgeon, for example, sees in India is probably much higher than in most other parts of the world, right? So their need for personalized innovation, for access to technology is possibly even greater than in many other markets, right? And I think that's where organizations like Brainlab, we're able to really try and serve those needs. And I think the spaces that we really see, there's a lot to talk about in this space. I mean, Brainlab, as you may know, we are also involved in many areas. So it's not just one or two areas, but I think some of the areas where really a lot of good innovation is going to come out and we're going to see maturity in the market, particularly around robotics. So I think that's an area that's certainly going to be important. And I think it's not just about robotics in the traditional sense of the way that you may look at industrial robots, for example. But I think robotics in the healthcare space, particularly in surgery, for example, they really need to be focused on the surgeon's workflows, on understanding what happens in that operating theater at each step, and how does the robot play part of that role along with the surgeon, right? And I mean, I think it's not just about the hardware by itself, but it's the brains behind the hardware. So of course, everyone's talking about AI these days. You can't go, you can't go a single day without hearing about AI, right? But Brainlab, for example, has been working on this concept of AI-driven intelligence behind this hardware and these technologies for several decades now, right? So we've really been building up to that, and I think at least for Brainlab, the future on that side looks very, very bright.
Talking about future, first of all, of course, the ecosystem is huge for Brainlab, right? But talking about the future, what is stored in the future for Brainlabs? Where do you see Brainlabs in the coming few decades?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question, because I think there are a lot of areas that we could possibly be working in. Like I mentioned, robotics is certainly one of those areas. I think the more complex cases that our customers, healthcare professionals, as they keep encountering, the greater the need for precise technology, the greater the need for bespoke technology, which is really about individualized patient care. So I think that's one area for certain that we are really well positioned with our past and our background in anatomical mapping and other AI-driven insights that we've been building on for many years. The other area that I think will be really, really critical is the overall data infrastructure and healthcare infrastructure, that ecosystem. So patients are becoming a lot more careful about their own personal health data, right? I mean, we are one of the largest healthcare populations in the world today, right? And it's the scale behind that is quite staggering. It can be almost overwhelming. So I think for organizations that really want to move up the value chain, how do you bring well integrated patient data into the health ecosystem? I think that's going to be probably one of the biggest challenges, but also opportunities for the mid to long.
Yeah, of course. We talked about digital operating rooms and lot more. And these are really interesting. And for a layman like me, this space is entirely interesting because I started speaking to Stefan, then Vinicius, and then I spoke to you about the whole ecosystem, the scale, right, where Brainlab is heading in the future. But thank you so much for sharing those views with us. It was a pleasure to have you with us today and speak about the whole medtech space today. Thank you so much.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you.
Thank you.